Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Fax Me That podcast. I am your host, Chucky. Today we have a special guest with us. Our number one, well, he's number 18, but he's a number one juror, Tom Evans. Welcome, Tom. How are you?
Great, Chuck. Thanks for having me on.
You are brother. Listen, thank you. I know that you've probably been around the world twice talking about what we're going to talk about today, but we want to deliver something special. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for considering even talking to me and just spending time with some of my fact finders. And glad to have you. So we're excited. We're really excited. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. Actually, I wanted to pick your brain on a couple of things. You know, my whole thing with my platform and for some of my viewers, we try to stay away from cookie cutter stuff. So we just try to have some fun. So I really appreciate you being on here. Tom, the first thing I want to ask you is this. How are you doing?
I'm doing a lot better now. I think I finished my second book just a few days before the before the trial in Phoenix started. And so for the first time, it gave me time to just contemplate and look back and just take some time off from it all. And I actually realized at that moment that I kind of wasn't okay when Lori's trial in Idaho was over. And it took me that much time, just about 2 years, to actually look back and realize that. And I feel like I am okay now. Like I've put things more in perspective. I've come to terms with everything.
Good, good. Well, you look good, so I'm glad that you're doing okay as well. And for those who don't know, and this isn't a secret, I mean everybody should know by now, but for some of my fact finders, Tom Evans has written two books now. Tom, do you want to go a little bit about number one, the title of those books and what they are about, and when one released and when one is going to release?
Yep. So the first book is Money, Power, and Sex, the Lori Vallow Daybell trial by juror number 18. And that book is kind of about my experience as a juror. And I go back into some history that kind of builds up to what led Lori to commit the crime she did. The second book, Chad Daybell, The One Mighty and Strong, is it's available now too. It's been out for a couple of weeks now. Um, it it focuses more on Chad's trial, but also goes back more into some more history. Um, I I was able to gain more knowledge, of course, because I had an extra year before I wrote that book, and there were so many unanswered questions still after writing the first book. And I think I answered some of those in the second book, but there's going to be a third book because there's still more unanswered questions that I'm working on getting those answered.
So there's going to be a third book.
There is.
So is this the first time that you've released that piece of information that there's going to be a third, or do people know that there's going to be a third?
I've mentioned it a few times before.
I was hoping you'd say no, Chuck. This is the first time that I'm telling everybody there's going to be a third book.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Congratulations. You know what? I'm gonna probably assume that there can probably be 25 books with all of this, right? Or just one major. You know what? Maybe we just like it's probably like the Bible now, right? Like I mean, we have so much events and so many people that we can probably do that. So congratulations. That's awesome. And I'm gonna get into all of that with you today. I wanted to do a little bit something called let's get the engines warmed up a little. So I am going to say a name. And what I'd like you to do is one word that comes to mind when you hear that name. Okay. Let's just get a little, let's get warmed up here. Let's get started. And then, we'll get into our things. Now, if you need a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds to think about it, no problem. We have time. We'll wait for you. And if I give you a name and you're like, I don't really know what to say or whatever, that's fine. You can take your time. But I just kind of wanted to get an idea for, for someone who has been involved and I don't want to. It's not like necessarily like beginning to end, right? But like I mean, you were there for the first trial. You know a lot of detail that most people do not. So I just kind of wanted to get an idea for what you felt about these names. Okay,
All right.
you ready?
Sounds good. Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, let's get it. Okay, Judge Boyce,
One word, honorable,
beautiful, very good. Okay, Rob Wood,
tenacious,
Okay. Lieutenant Ray Hermosillo.
Hero.
Good. Very good. Very suitable. Alex Cox.
2 words.
Yeah,
Serial killer.
that fits. No problem. Lori Vallow Daybell.
Horrible mom. 2 words again.
Okay. Chad Daybell.
Well, 1 word is hard for these people.
Give me all of them. That's fine.
Okay, so Chad Daybell, stupid, cowardly,
Okay. Last one.
vicious, vicious.
Vicious. That's a good one. Sorry to interrupt you. I thought you were done. Last one, and I've never really asked this before. This is super random. Garth Daybell.
Uh, hmm, I can't come up with a word, but I feel sorry for him.
Okay, fair enough. You did great. That's awesome. That's probably why you write books, because you matched it all to perfection. Good for you. That
Thank
was
you.
well done. I often wonder what people, I mean, you can describe all these people in paragraphs and just kind of, uh, I don't know. There's so much to say about so many of them, but you know what? You were spot on with a lot of these people, and a lot of respect goes out to everybody who was involved in this, yourself included, for bringing justice to the people who are no longer with us. And but anyway, okay. So really quick, why would somebody? I mean, I guess I do know why, but you went through this process that we will talk about, and then you said, I am going to write a book. Why?
Um, the first reason, so when I finished my service as a juror, I walked out of the courthouse, um, and I had the idea in my mind. Like I felt like there's really a story to tell here. But originally, my thought was that as a juror, um, the high road really is for me to just move on with my life and not make it about me. And I didn't want anybody to perceive me that way. But then I thought about it and I thought, this is too important of a story and somebody needs to tell it. And I felt like I'm the person to tell it. I have a lot of background, um, history of the Mormon church and stuff like that, some exposure to all of that. And I just happened to end up as a juror on this trial. So it made me think, there's a story to be told, and I'm the guy to tell it. And the story was really how it started out being just dark for me. Like there was no positive side to any of this being in this trial as a juror. And by the time it was over, I was actually honored to be there, and I felt like I really witnessed something special. The law enforcement, prosecution, the court system in Idaho, everything worked so well the way it was supposed to. And I wanted to tell that story. And the other side of the story that I wanted to tell was it wasn't so much why she did what she did, but how she could get to a point where she could do what she did. So I wanted to try to make sense of that. And honestly, that's why the third book, too, because I haven't really answered that question thoroughly yet. So I'm working on that.
Got it. Along your process, when did you say to yourself, I'm going to write a book about this?
Well, it was so the trial ended, and there was a couple of months between the verdict and the sentencing. And I thought about it during that whole time. And I think the idea came to me probably towards the end of the trial, just sitting in there as a juror. And then it took me that 2 months, though, to really decide to do that. And I think um, when I went to the sentencing and I met certain people that I hadn't been able to meet because, being a juror, you're isolated from it all. I met some people in the media. I met Kay and Larry. Um, Once that happened, I decided, yes, I'm doing this. So it was right at that moment, the night before the sentencing, when I finally made my final decision that this is something I was going to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, before we get into this process of a juror and your experience, give me a little bit about your background. What did you do before you were introduced into this whole fiasco?
So I'm semi-retired. What I do now is I own houses, I rent houses, and I spend a lot of time maintaining them, managing that. But before that, I was a contractor. I designed and built custom homes.
Oh, cool.
But a completely different thing uh, than writing books. But I've always kind of been a storyteller too. So
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay. All right. And then, so one day you come home and you find a summons in your mailbox, something like that. Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And what was your thought process behind that? You saw that. Let me ask you this before we go there. Have you been summoned for jury duty before?
I have a couple of times, but I had never served. I always had a reason I couldn't. Um,
Same. So I unfortunately, I don't know what it was for till this day, but I got a summons and I'm all excited, because I'm now, I'm into the whole, the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell case, and I'm
right.
thinking, man, maybe something like that too, right? So I'm filling it out, and of course my number didn't get called, my luck. So that kind of sucked a little. But anyway, so okay, so you get it in the mail, you open it, you fill out, you go through the wait a minute. I think you just said that before you've been summoned, but you had some things that you wrote down that maybe would not allow you to do it, right?
It was truly a hardship for me. I was running a
Okay.
business, had employees and everything would have just had to be shut down for. So
That's
I was able
interesting.
to explain that to the judge, and it really,
Interesting. But this round, you said available.
yeah.
Uh,
Now I'm semi-retired. I really have no excuse.
Okay. All right. All right. So you fill out the paperwork, you submit that in. What were your thoughts behind it? Did you have any curiosity? I mean, of course you had curiosity, but what were your thoughts behind that when you submitted that paperwork back?
I didn't know what trial it was for, and I just thought, well, it's time for me to go do my service, and I I didn't even really think a lot about what it might be for. It was just going to be what it was, and I was going to have to do it.
Got it. Now, before you even got that paper, did you hear anything about this case at all? Anywhere, something, a smidge, nothing, anything.
Yeah, I knew who she was. Um, I didn't know who anybody else involved was. I just, I'd seen her face on the news, I suppose, and it's not really the kind of news that I watch. If I watch anything, it's usually political stuff or whatever. But I just don't watch a lot of that kind of thing. And so once I found out what case it was, I think I confused it with a different trial or a different case. There was a case in Idaho. It might have been a few years before this one, but of a missing child in a campground or something. I can't
Okay.
remember exactly what it was. I kind of thought, well, it must be that, or I just didn't know. I couldn't. So I knew who she was. I knew her name. I knew her face, but that was all I knew.
Got it. Okay. All right. So just so you know that's very, I mean, that is very true. And not that anybody's disagreeing with that or not believing, but even where I live, it's a surrounding Idaho state. There are a lot of people, I say those names until this day, they're like, huh? Like I don't know what that is. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes I'll turn on the TV and there's news about 1,000 stuff going on across the country, and just like, it's not that you don't care, but it's just like, you just channel surf or whatever, so you don't pay attention to it. So, um, tell me the process though. So you send that in, then you get called into the courthouse, or how does that work?
Going back on that is kind of a blur for me, but
Okay.
yeah. So first the summons, and then there was a questionnaire.
Okay.
And I think that first one was mostly about what I knew.
Okay.
Um, but it was generic. Like it didn't clue me into what the case was. I don't
Okay.
think that first one. And then there was a second one, which might have clued me in. I can't really remember. What I do remember really well is when I got called in. The third thing that happened was I was asked to come actually to the courthouse. Um, Maybe I'm jumping ahead of you a little bit, but
No. This is fine because I'll jump back if I have to. But
yeah.
that's the other thing. My platform, we don't really follow timelines. We just talk. So no, that's good. Keep going.
So I get called in. I go into a jury room, which was a great big room. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in there. And I just figured business as usual, they have cases and they need jurors. And I didn't know they were all called in for one trial and that
Wow.
I was one of all of those people. But that was what was happening. And more questionnaires, if I remember right. filling out more paperwork, answering more questions. And I think when I was filling out the questionnaire sitting there in that room, I think that her name was on that maybe. Somehow I got clued in that it was Lori Vallow Daybell. But then the next thing that happened was actually called into the courtroom. They would call us in groups, and she was sitting there. And so that was the first time I saw her. And that was a, a very strange moment for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really quick, I want to go back just a little bit, and then we're going to talk about that strange moment. So the time you walked into the courthouse, there are several hundred people still there, and then she was sitting in the same courtroom. Yes.
So the hundreds of people were in the jury room,
Okay.
and we were brought into the courtroom in groups of maybe 50 or so
Got it.
people.
Okay. And then that's when you saw her.
Yeah, I remember walking in the courtroom, she was sitting there, and I saw her, and even being only just vaguely aware of what she did, um, it was a really odd moment. It just felt like everything kind of went dark for me. It was just really, I'm not a real spiritual person, but something happened in that moment that made me start questioning things. And
Okay.
it sounds really strange. And the only people who really understand when I talk about this is other jurors who had the same experience.
No, no, no. I get it. Listen, I dare say that I've been in front of people who have done a lot of bad things in their life, and there's definitely an aura. Like, there's no, I'm not gonna disagree to that, or, but I do concur. Like, I do definitely understand what you're trying to say. I would like to go into that a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you saw her, what was she wearing? How was she sitting? This is your first time seeing Lori, yes?
Yes.
Okay, what was she wearing? How was she sitting? What was her demeanor?
She was sitting between her two attorneys,
Okay,
Jim Archibald and John Thomas.
okay,
I had no idea who those gentlemen were. Ray Hermosillo was the other person in the courtroom. Um, and the prosecutors would have been there, and then Judge Boyce. And then the only other people in that courtroom were the potential jurors.
okay. What?
As far as what she's wearing goes, I can't really remember. I think she might have been wearing like a pantsuit type thing.
Okay. And did you lock eyes with her? Did you get that opportunity, or you just saw her face?
At that moment, I just saw her. It was later when we made eye contact.
And without knowing all these horrible details, what did you feel inside?
Um, it was really strange. My world just felt like it kind of went dark at that moment. I could feel some kind of evil presence. And like I said, I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe
You don't need to be. You don't need to be.
believe
It's
in any of
okay.
this kind of stuff. But in that moment, I had to question that, right? Because I was feeling like actual evil.
Got it. Okay. Fair. That I believe, and I definitely understand what you're saying. I definitely agree with you 1,000%. Okay. And then out of how many were you one of the ones chosen?
I've gotten a few different numbers from a couple of different people who both should know the exact number, but it was somewhere between 1,800 and 2,400. So around 2,000 people.
Wow. Okay. I mean, talk about the lottery ticket, right?
I know. And the whole time I'm thinking, once I realized, okay, all these people are here for this trial, and you come in there and get questioned or whatever, and people would be released. And I was just always waiting to be released. I couldn't wait for that to happen for me. And even when it got down to the final 18, I just thought it was another group of 18. I didn't realize that I was actually on the jury at that point until we were taken back into the jury room and they started giving us instructions.
Okay. So you've been to Arizona, you kind of seen some of their process versus your process. Yours was a little bit more on lock, correct?
Yeah, in terms of the jurors, it was a lot different.
Yeah.
We were, I, we drove. So in the morning before court, we would drive to an undisclosed location, park our cars, and get into a van with armed guard and be driven into the basement of the courthouse, and where we would meet other armed guards who would escort us into our jury room. So we were totally isolated. And at the time, I thought that was, well, this is a murder trial. We must be in some kind of danger. And I remember telling my wife, lock the doors, be aware of your surroundings and everything while I'm gone. And there was a police car. We live in a really quiet neighborhood. It's a cul-de-sac. Nobody comes down our street unless they're coming here for a reason. But there was a cop car that was parked just a few houses down. A couple of different times I saw that, and that just would never be in this neighborhood. So at first I was concerned that we might be in some kind of danger, but as the trial went on, I began to realize that it was mostly that they were trying to keep us isolated from the media. And if that cop car was there, it was probably there. I'm sure they were there watching over our house, but I think it was there making sure that the media didn't approach us. There wasn't like some killer out there trying to get us or anything like that. They
Got it.
weren't that organized.
Got it. So let me ask you this. When did you know what you were up against? Was it what and pardon my ignorance, I guess I should know this, but did you find out about what your purpose there was for when the an opening statements, or was it before where they said, "Hey, this is what you guys are up against. You guys are going to hear testimony. You guys are going to hear witnesses." When did you find out about Lori Vallow? At
Got a little
100%.
Yeah, I got a little bit of information before the trial actually started because they would ask us questions like, "Are you okay?" I don't remember the exact questions, but something like, "Are you okay with seeing the bodies of murdered children?" or something like that. So um, I knew it was something about that, but it wasn't until opening statements when Lindsay Blake kind of laid out the case then I started getting details.
Okay. What did you feel? Like, how did you feel? At any point, did you feel like, what the hell am I doing here?
Pretty much the whole time.
Okay.
But it started out, I felt, uh, like I said, it was just dark and I knew it was going to be horrific and it was going to be very hard. But I did not know, I thought I was dealing with it all right. You know, I didn't know till a long, long time after the trial ended how much it really affected me.
Wow. Talk to me a little bit about the atmosphere. You just mentioned a minute ago that you would go from the courthouse basement, armed guards in a van into a jury room. Talk to me about that. How many times did you have to travel within being a juror, right? How many times did you have to travel from where to where?
Well, every day, it was 7 weeks, including jury selection.
It was a long time. It was a long time.
Yeah. So 5 weeks of in the vans, during testimony. And it was so 17 other people that I'd never met before
Sure.
and were piled into this very small jury room. The big jury room was for jury selection or whatever for other trials. We had a really small jury room just adjacent to the courtroom. Um, Fortunately, it had a window looking outside, and it was springtime, and the snow was starting to recede up the mountains, and I spent a lot of time kind of just looking outside and wishing I could be outside instead of stuck in that room. But so 17 other people, all kind of getting to know each other. We couldn't talk about the case or anything, but um, a lot of really good people, and some of them have become really close friends over time. But we kind of grouped up a little bit, I guess. Um, like people do, just like a classroom or whatever. We would talk about family, kids, the weather, whatever.
Got it. I would imagine after sharing and experiencing something so traumatic together, that there would be a lot of relationships built from that. But my understanding, if I understand correctly, no case talk. You guys can talk about grandkids, family, soccer, whatever you want to talk about, but you can't talk about the case. And I'm assuming there were people watching and listening.
Yeah, there was a bailiff at our door the whole time. And if anything was ever said that even remotely sounded like it could be about the trial, they would say something to us.
Was the
Uh,
bailiff was the sorry to interrupt you. Was the bailiff cool, or was he kind of like
oh, yeah.
okay.
No, the bailiffs were great. Ken and Steve, I'll never forget those guys. They were our drivers and they were pretty much with us the whole time.
Did anybody ever crack jokes? like during,
Oh yeah,
driving in the
oh yeah.
van okay.
Yeah.
I
They,
think if
they
I was
try,
part of that, I would be that person to, crack some sort of joke or something. But yeah,
well, and those guys had a great sense of humor, and they kind of lightened the mood a little bit as much as they could.
you know what? That's good. I think that's much needed, especially with what's going on. Very, very serious matter. But again, there's a time and a place, right? So, how did you feel like when you first when you first knew that it was going to be sequestration, into a van, armed, hush hush? Were you kind of like, oh my gosh, this is like a hostage situation type thing? Like, how were your feelings about that?
I was a little freaked out about it. Like I said, I wasn't sure if there was some kind of danger involved. If they might have people out there that, you see movies or whatever, they, murder a juror or something to cause a mistrial. Or I had no idea of any of this. And even when the trial started, I spent some time just looking into the gallery trying to figure out who people were. And I didn't know at that time that none of them were there for Lori, not one person. But there were some interesting looking characters. I didn't know who Larry was, right? Larry Woodcock.
Right. Okay.
But he was this fierce looking guy and he was always looking into the jury. And
Yeah.
he kind of freaked me out, not knowing. I thought, oh, I wonder what this guy's up to.
So,
Uh, and there were there was like a row of women that would come dressed like in 40s style, their hair and clothes. And so I thought, well, these women must be like Lori's followers or something. They weren't.
really?
Yeah, I don't
That's
know
the
what
first.
they were about, but they weren't.
That's the first time I heard that. So back to Larry, he does look like he does look like he's looking into your soul,
Oh
but
yeah,
probably one of the nicest and most gentlest. Yeah, I call him America's grandpa. He's
absolutely.
a beautiful man. He's a beautiful person, and so is Kay. They're just beautiful people. I've had the luxury and the honor of meeting those two and being friends with them. That they're good, they're such good people. But you're right. If you don't know him and it was your first time seeing him, it could, yeah, he looks a little intimidating. As
Yeah,
far as late, go ahead. What's that?
I was going to say I didn't know what he was there for. For
Yeah,
all I
yeah,
knew,
yeah. No, yeah. I mean, now you know now. But and then the whole ladies. I know there was a group of ladies that were there. I would like to know what I mean, man, they must have I want to know what they do for a living because they were there. I mean, they opened the courthouse and they closed the courthouse,
yeah,
right? I mean, for 7 weeks and some. They
yeah,
were there. That group of ladies I do know about, and man, kudos to them. They have so much invested in this, you know. I
yeah,
don't even know if they were family members or not, but nevertheless, I mean, they were there every single day. I think they were even there when the courthouse was closed, just in case something happened or something they missed something. But as far as the ladies in 40s, that's the first time I heard that. Have you gotten any information about that at all now?
no, I'm still not sure what they were about. Um, yeah, I just don't know.
Okay, well, let's put it out there. For all of my fact finders, there was a group of ladies sitting in a row together, dressed in 40 styles outfits. If you have any information on that, Tom and Chucky want to know what the hell that was about. What was the purpose of that? Tom, were they there every day or just one time?
I don't know if they were there every day, but they were there more than once for sure.
Got
They
it.
were there
Okay.
for a lot of it.
I'm sure in the comments we'll get some information about that. If not, email me or DM me directly. I'd like to know. I'm kind of curious myself now. Okay, so the one question I had as far as transportation goes, when you were done with a court with a day in court, did you loaded into a van from the courthouse? Did they drop you off? Did everybody park in one location that was secure, where they dropped you guys off, make sure you guys get into your cars okay and everyone goes safe, or were you guys parked in different locations? How did that look?
Yeah, so everybody came to one parking lot. It was not secure. It was right across from a jail of some kind. I don't remember, juvenile detention or something like that. And that kind of sketched me out a little bit too. Um, it seemed to me at first like we should be parking like in a gated area or something because
Sure.
we're just out in the open here. If anything was going to happen, this is where it would happen.
Right. Yeah.
But like I said, in the end, it didn't matter. It was just media they were concerned about. But
Got
yeah,
it.
so
So was this
parked. Pardon?
sorry. No, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Yeah, parked in a parking lot. And they told us that we'd be changing locations regularly, but we only changed it one time about halfway through.
Oh, okay. All right. Was this Rexburg where your cars were at, or was it St. Anthony?
No, this was in Boise.
Oh, Boise. Forgive me. I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah. When Chad was in St. Anthony for a long time before his thing came up. So
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking in my head. So yeah, you're right. Okay. And Boise is bigger than a Rexburg or a
right.
and you know what? And I've been to Boise plenty, and I've talked to my fair share of people. I got really good friends that work in the hospitality industry in Boise. They don't know what the hell this case was about. They have no
Yeah.
idea. So that's pretty interesting that, because everyone thinks of Idaho as a small town, small backwoods. It's so boring that of course everybody's going to know everything about everything, and that's not the case at all. Like a lot of people surprisingly did not know what this looked like for or what this was. So, Tom, really quick. So, do you remember opening statements?
Yes.
Okay. How did you feel when opening statements were done from the prosecutor side?
The same way I felt through most of the trial, like it was confusing and I was trying to keep up and understand what was being presented.
Okay. Tom, in your opinion, when did you think, if you can remember the day, beautiful, or a roundabout time, when in Tom's brain and in your heart did the light bulb go off and said, guilty?
So I get this question all the time. And so I thought about it a lot. I remembered back, but there really isn't just a moment that I went, oh, yeah, okay, so that's the one thing that turns me into, she's guilty. It was more an accumulation of things that all added together. Um, and you kind of separate yourself as a juror. You have your emotional side, which early on I felt like she was guilty. My emotional side was telling me she was guilty. But then you also have your pragmatic side, and the pragmatic side is the side that you have to go with, right? They had to prove to me that she was guilty. And so I was waiting for that one thing that would prove it to me, but it really wasn't that. It was more, there's this thing, there's that thing, there's another thing, just layer on layer of things that all come together, kind of made my mind up for me.
Okay. I heard there's a lot of smiling from Lori. Were there ever smiles that you've seen in times that were inappropriate that you felt like, you know what, this lady is probably not playing with a full deck?
Not as much during that trial. When that trial was over, and I've seen her a lot since, yeah, very inappropriate, flirty. Um, there was maybe a little bit of that during this trial, mostly like as she would come into the courtroom. Um, but yeah, she spent a lot of time kind of just looking down, looking away. Um, Not real. She wasn't herself, I would say. She wasn't what we've seen in the interviews. And as she was acting as her own attorney in Phoenix, we didn't see any of that person in her trial in Idaho.
I think she knows how to play the stage and knows how to play the audience a little. I think that she's going to be a little bit more professional if she's representing herself, and then probably a little bit more careless if she's being represented. I think in her head, everyone thought she was already guilty, so she didn't really care per se. So um, you're done with these days, and you go home, and guess what, Tom? You can't talk to nobody.
Right.
Now you're suffering in silence. How does
Yeah.
that evening look like for you?
There was a lot of suffering in silence. I would come home. So after, court ends, I think at 3:30, 4 o'clock, whatever. And then it would take about an hour to go through the whole van thing, get into my truck and get home. And my wife could sit here and she could you know, watch it, listen to it on TV or whatever. She listened to it somewhere. So she was aware of what my day was like whenever I would get home. And we couldn't talk about it. I couldn't tell anybody about it. All of our friends who were used to seeing me regularly were not seeing me anymore. Um, but as far as my day goes, we would usually go on a hike, try to do something that was just distract me from it all. Um, but I'm real thankful I had my wife to come home to every day.
Wives are amazing. I don't know how, yeah, I think they're superb. And I've spoken to a lot of wives who, let me stop, not a lot. I've spoken to a couple of wives who who have supported their husbands through this, and I got to tell you, my goal is to do one episode on just them because I don't think this could have been done without their support, and they're not in the light, and no one knows about them, and I think they should be recognized. I think they're amazing. Partners are amazing. Tom, let me ask you a personal question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but um, was there ever a night or nights where you just came home and you broke down?
Uh, no, I'm not really that way.
Okay.
I think my reaction to it was more to shut down.
Okay.
Um, but there were moments like I was starting. I don't really dream a lot either, and I started having like night terrors. Not every night, but a couple times I had night terrors, um, or sometimes just like a night terror is different than a nightmare. Like a
Sure.
night terror, I would wake up and I couldn't shake the feeling of, I don't know if it's fear, whatever all those emotions are, anger, all those kind of things. That was starting to happen to me. And it didn't feel like it was directly related to the trial, like they wouldn't be about that, but it was absolutely 100% caused by that.
Okay. Um, after every trial day, was there any recap with the jurors where you guys could talk about okay, so all of the talking happened at deliberation. That's the only time that anything can be said. Wow, I cannot imagine that must have been the war room, right? From like the White House, like everyone just gets together and just has this blah. I mean, what was the first? Do you remember what the first thing you said was?
So I can't imagine either because I didn't deliberate.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Okay, that's right. Okay. Fair enough. And talk to me about that. I mean, did you kind of were you angry? Were you going to ever get up at one point and say this is an outrage?
It's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to stand up and say, I call bullshit on this whole thing. I've been here for 7 weeks, and now you're telling me to get out.
How did that day? I mean, were you pissed? Were you pretty mad?
I was. So, the whole time going into this, I was waiting for my number to get called, thinking it would get called and I would be released. And then you go through the whole trial, and it's exhausting. You sit there and you try to keep up, you try to understand what they're presenting, and you know how this case is. There's just layer after layer after layer, and so many unanswered questions. And there was so much information that I was trying to comprehend and understand. And honestly, I felt like the stupid kid in math class. Like, and I know everybody else felt the same way when it was over and I got to talk to them. But I felt like it was just me. Like I'm really not understanding all this cell bright stuff or cell tower locations and all these things. Um, but anyway, so it came down to that last day. I had spent all this emotional and intellectual energy trying to understand everything, and then the first number out of the hat as an alternate is mine, and I'm asked to leave the courthouse. And so in that moment, I did. I really felt like my initial reaction was to stand up and you know call foul.
This is an outrage.
Yeah,
That would have
but
been nice, Tom. That would have been nice. In hindsight, now would you have done it just to get more of that?
no, no,
Come
because
on. That would have
well,
been fun. Let's live a little. Come on. All they would have said was, "Sir, please." None of that. You know what I mean? But hey, that would have been chapter 4 in your book. That would have been
it would have been
awesome.
something, yeah, but it would not have been fair because it's not about me, right? It's
Yeah, yeah. No, no.
about
You're right. You're
justice.
right. Okay, Tom. So let's do this real quick. Let's pretend that it's deliberation day and now you're allowed to talk about it and I'm your colleague. I was in that day. What would be the first words out of your mouth to me? Now we get to talk about it. We heard everything there is to hear, all the evidence, all the shenanigans, all the Looney Tune stuff. What would be one of the first things that you would say to me? Okay, Chuck, we're here, time to deliberate. Let's hear it.
I would just say, what in the hell did we just see? Is this real? And I think a lot of people had that reaction, like, am I living in real life here, or is this a nightmare I'm in? And
Wow.
then so you go through that, and I don't know how much time they spent doing that. I'm sure they must have spent some time doing that. Um, they don't. they made an agreement with each other not to really talk about it outside of those 12. So I don't have a lot of information about how it went in there. I have some, um, but I know that they did a little bit of that, and then they went right into jury instructions, and they spent quite a bit of time going through those. And it wasn't. It took 7 hours of deliberation, but it wasn't because there was anybody that had any doubts or that had to be convinced. It was because they wanted to be very careful going through those instructions step by step. And Judge Boyce, I think, was really thorough and laid everything out really clearly. You know, everybody involved in this is being so careful to make sure that it's done the right way. So I think mainly that's what took the time.
I would love to meet Judge Boyce. I think he is like you said earlier, an honorable man, fair, just. I think he did everything the right way to the T to make sure that there was no bullshit afterwards. So I take my hats off for him. You know,
I've gotten to meet him. I've gotten to meet him 3 or 4 times since
oh,
in
okay.
person,
All right.
and
Well,
super nice guy, really down to earth. Um, I've met and gotten to know a lot of the people involved in all of this, the prosecutors, and Ray, and I've gotten to know Ray real well, and some of the other police officers, FBI.
you know,
All
I
good.
I want to echo that. You know, even to strangers like me, I had nothing to do with this at all. I'm just the guy that watched it on TV and followed my wife because she followed it really closely, and then I became, a brother with Ray, and I was just a nobody, and I think sometimes my mother would always say, right, well, my wife is super good at this too. It's always try to find the good out of everything bad. And sometimes that's hard to do, but I'll tell you what, this created a lot of solid foundations for relationships, for friendships that'll go forever and ever and ever. Had this ever happened, we would have been friends with anybody that we come across. So I agree with you on that 100%. Just a second ago, you said that the 12 that were able to deliberate have things that they said amongst themselves that they don't want to share or can't share. Was that by law or is that something that they themselves just came up with?
Yeah, I think they just agreed amongst themselves, like what happens in the jury room stays in the jury room, kind of.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. That's fair. I mean, you can always say, but guys, I was kind of part of this too. You want to share that with me? No,
But
that
I have, and we have had some conversations.
good.
A couple of the jurors I've gotten really close with. We've become friends, and they've told me something, but it's not a lot of detail or anything. It's just
Sure,
this is
sure.
basically how we went about it.
It would have just been nice to have been a fly on that wall and just kind of hear some. All right, this is what it is, right? Imagine somebody tells you you need to give me a book report on 3 movies that you're going to watch. Oh, and by the way, you can't analyze anything per day and break it down. You got to do it at the end of it. That's so much information that you literally have to break down in detail
Yeah,
after it's all said and done. So it's just like, you know what I mean? Well, it's kind of hard. Anyway, I'm sure that's the reason they have the process that they do and it works. So I just think that would be very, very, that's amazing to be able to do. There's so much to be said, so much to be have any of your colleagues while you were there, have you seen anyone break down after a day or so? Like just, gosh, man, this is so hard.
yeah, there was quite a bit of that.
Okay.
There were a few people in particular that were more emotional, or less able to hide their feelings, I guess, more open about their feelings, maybe.
And you can't talk about it to nobody.
Right?
You
We could
can't.
hug each other, you know, things like that, but you couldn't actually talk about what we
Was there
saw.
ever was there ever a time where a bailiff had to, reprimand or say something to you guys like, hey, hey, something like that?
There was a few times, um, just careful what you're talking about because it might sound. We never were talking about the trial, but his worry was that somebody might be walking down the hall and it might sound like we're talking about the trial. So if we're like talking, say, about a different trial or anything like that, they would go, "Oh, careful, guys," but always in a super nice way. The only time that it got kind of irritating to me was there was a day when, and I forget what his name was, but like the lead judge of Idaho came in and gave us a little speech in our jury room. And we'd been sitting there for I don't know how many days at that point. We were all a little bit tense anyway. And he basically came in there and, was threatening us with being sequestered. And I felt like, I don't think he did it in in an unkind way or anything. It was just I didn't want to hear that at that moment. Like it felt like a threat, and really it was just him doing his job, telling us how important this was. But that's the only time that bothered me. That I had any interaction with anybody that bothered me was that one time. Every other reaction was nothing but kindness, an extreme attention to detail, and making sure that everything went smoothly. It was all done, in a good way.
Okay. Tom, if someone said to you, Tom, you are allowed and you are permitted to say something to Lori after this. So the day comes, they show they show pictures of JJ and she refuses to be in that room, right? If someone said to you, Tom, you are allowed to say something to her based on her decision on not wanting to be here, what would you say to her? What would you have said to her?
First of all, she had to be in the room. She tried to get out of it,
Right, right. Yeah.
but they made her be in the room. Okay, so um, I guess I would just say that you did this. You caused this. You are why we're all here being subjected to this. And hell yes, you're going to be in this room.
Yeah.
I would have been, I didn't know what was going on at the time. We just sat in our jury room for an extra long time that day while they were working that out. And when we came back in, she was slumped down in her chair as far as anybody could be slumped without falling onto the floor. um, and just her head was off to the side and she just looked away the whole time. She didn't once look up, she didn't look at the pictures, she didn't look at the jurors, she didn't look at anybody. She just had her head turned to the side and looking away the whole time, trying to ignore it. And somebody told me that they thought that they had drugged her that day, to get her to calm down. I'm not sure if that was true or just somebody saying that maybe that's what happened. I don't know.
They told the jury that. They said, by the way, she might be on the medication for this.
No, they didn't tell the jury that in the moment. Somebody told me after the fact
Got it.
that they
Okay.
thought
All
she
right.
might be drugged.
Could be speculation, but that's exactly what the reaction I was looking for because to a lot of us, it was disgusting, right? Wait a minute. You green light this whole action to happen and then you don't want to see it. What are you create? Like no, like this. So I was wondering like what would a juror say to that? What would a juror say at that point in time, right? If she would have looked at Tom and said, "By the way, I don't want to be here for this, Tom. Can I leave?" And then you would say, "Hell yes, you got it." Yeah. No, that was a good response because that's kind of how a lot of people felt like no, you're going to be here for this. So that's kind of what
I'm
I was.
sure everybody felt the same way, but I just know that for me personally, it was like, yeah, you need to be here.
So that day where you had to witness those pictures, I'm assuming it was a rough day. Talk to me about that day.
It was an extremely hard day. And I told myself, so they warned us what was coming. We lined up in the hall. Every day before we would get called into court, the bailiff would line us up in the hall and by our number. And then, all rise and we would go in the courtroom and sit down. And on that day when we lined up in the hall, they handed us these little bags. I didn't know what they were. And I asked what these are, and they were barf bags. And so, and
Really?
yeah, and they also told us, so, this is going to be a tough day. I don't remember what they said exactly, but they warned us a little bit. So I knew going in, we're probably going to see pictures of the exhumed bodies, remains, whatever it was. And I made a deal with myself. I knew it was my responsibility as a juror to look. So I told myself, I'm going to glance as quickly as I can and look away. That's all I need. Because I already, they're murdered. It was horrible. I already knew all this, right? I didn't need to see it. I didn't feel like I needed to see it. So I did that. But those images to this day are burned into my brain. There's no way I can forget them. And having talked to the prosecution after the trial was over, um, they contemplated for a long time whether to show those pictures because they knew it was going to be really hard on the jury. But in the end, they decided that they had to. They had to do everything they could to get a conviction, and not showing us those pictures didn't fit in with that. So they made the decision to do that. But it was tough.
I can only imagine. What did you see some of courtroom people reactions? The reactions of some of the people in the courtroom?
Yeah, there was a lot of reaction. nobody in the gallery could see the pictures. They pointed all the monitors away so that the public couldn't see it. And the only people that could see it were the jurors and the judge. Anybody sitting on that side of the rail could see it.
Got it. Now you're in these rooms for 7 weeks. You have clear vision of Judge Boyce. Now, Judge Boyce's job is to be boom. I have to be fair. I cannot show emotion. We all know he's a human being, right? He probably had nights after not just this case, but any case where he's gone home and just kind of like, broke down or whatever. Did you ever catch him slipping in a sense of like, a facial expression that made you feel like, wow, he's pretty sad about this, or wow, he's like distraught about this? Did you ever see that in him in the whole process?
Not during the trial. He was really good at, I guess, hiding his emotions and being straight faced. I spent a lot of time looking at him, kind of wondering what was going through his head because he's doing it too, and I didn't know at the time. But talking to him and his court attorney Courtney after the trial was over, they told me Courtney knew a lot about the case. That was her job, to learn, understand, know everything she could about the jurors. Um, Judge Boyce's job was to stay neutral, so she had all that information that she did not share with him. So he was going into it probably not as ignorant about everything as the jurors were, but being as ignorant about it as he could be, as little information as possible. So he was hearing a lot of this stuff at the same time we were, and seeing a lot of the witnesses, um, and I'm sure making judgments about those witnesses just as the jurors were. So that interested me, finding that out after the fact, because during the trial they showed no motion. The first time I saw a motion was at the sentencing after Lori gave her allocution statement, and he told her that he didn't believe that a God in any religion would want her to do the things she had done. And that's the most emotion I've ever seen of him, which it was to the point, and it was very well said. Um, but it's not like he showed a lot of emotion when he said it.
Yeah, they're good. They are so good. I don't know how they do it. I myself, I don't know that I would be able to do that without getting up at some point and saying, "This is an outrage." No, but I think they do a great job with that because there's so much to be said about these people that sit there, not just with her case, but in any case, right? You hear about these like just horrible things, things that are being done to human beings that you're just baffled about. It's just you got to keep your mouth shut and you just got to play fair and keep that poker face. Speaking of her allocution, what you were in the courtroom for that? Yes, sentencing day. You chose to go to that, right? I think you had all right to be there. I mean, I was there. I mean, if anybody had to be there, it was you, not me, right? But I was there. I had the privilege of being there, and that was interesting. I learned quite a bit that day. Just hearing her shackles coming in. We're all there in the room. It's quiet, and then she's coming in with her chains, and it gives you like this like feeling of darkness. I knew exactly what you're talking about because that's kind of how I felt. But when you heard her ramble about that stuff, what were your thoughts?
I was sitting, close to all the police officer, FBI, a lot of them that were involved in the trial were sitting behind me, and I hadn't gotten to know those guys yet, right? Um, but I could feel them behind me, and I was just feeling like, man, what must it be like for these guys to sit here? Guys like Ray who had to actually go through the whole exhumation and all that stuff. What must it be like for them to sit here and have to listen to this crap and to have her have the right to say whatever she wanted to say, even though everybody knew it was just a whole bunch of crap, just a whole bunch of made up, just it was meaningless. So that was my main thought, was feeling those guys behind me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Tom, I got a question to ask you. I don't think this has been asked to you before, and if it has, great. I mean, I'll just ask it differently, I guess. You're not a detective, you're not a police officer, but you have a brain, and you heard of all of the testimony, and you heard of all the pieces that came together to come to a conclusion. I guess the first thing I want to ask you is this: Would you in that excuse me, would you in my gosh, deliberation, forgive me,
There you
in the
go.
deliberation room, would you have also agreed to guilty?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. Second, who else do you think you would have, if you had the power, if someone came up to you and said, Tom, this will never happen. So everybody relax. If you had the power, right? If you had the power and someone said to you, Tom, I would like you, after hearing everything, I would like you to pick out one, two, three more characters that you've heard of that you feel should be in a hot seat. I'm a pot stirrer too, Tom. So let's hear it. Who would you have picked?
I love the question, and I don't get asked that one near enough. And it needs to be asked. Number one on the list would be Melanie Boudreau Pulowski, right?
Okay.
She had to be behind, she followed in Lori's footsteps. She had to be behind the attempt on Brandon. Who knows what she was up to when she went to the house and tried to get her kids when Brandon wasn't home and his father was taking care of the kids with Alex sitting in the truck. Who knows what was about to happen there? Um, so she's number one.
Okay.
And why she's been getting a pass so far, I do not know. When she came into Chad's trial to testify, I was sitting in the gallery, and she came in flanked by two attorneys, all dressed in really expensive, nice suits, and they sat down right next to me. And I would love to have talked to those guys. Unfortunately, we don't get to sit there and talk in court in the gallery, but so she's number one. And I guess number two would be Melanie Gibb. Um, even though a lot of people think she's kind of heroic for recording the phone call and doing what she did, I think she was just covering her ass more than
Thank you.
anything. Um, and I guess it feels like I'm missing somebody, but David Warwick is somewhere on that list for sure. Um, I've talked to people who know him a lot better than I do, and they have nothing but good things to say about that guy. My impression of him sitting through watching him testify in both trials and the story that they tell about the night JJ was murdered, I'm not buying any of it, and I don't trust that guy. Um, so those three for sure. Zulema, I give a little bit of a pass to because I think of all the people in the inner circle, I think she's the one who really truly believed all this stuff. I think she thinks that there are people that have a higher spiritual standing, and she wants to be a follower of those people. I think that's where she was at, which makes her dangerous too, but not on purpose, I guess. And
Well,
there's some others, that you could probably throw in there too. But those I think are the top three.
well, shit. Don't give Tom Evans a badge because he's gonna knock on your door today. Good
Um,
job, Tom, brother. Look, man, I didn't even ask you to pick those people from the hat, but I think it's very simply, and I'm not, the authorities and law enforcement, they did what they did for a purpose. Rob Wood, in my opinion, is super intellectual. He is a man of reason. He's a fair man. I love Rob. He's a good man.
I
There
do
has
too.
to have been reasons, unknown reasons, whatever. Hey, we might see her in the hot seat for Brandon Boudreaux's trial. I don't know, but you're right. Everybody says that. Why are there just two people in the hot seat? Because in other criminal organizations with this whole RICO thing, forget about it. There's 15, 20 people down the line who are getting hemmed up and being tried. So to see these people so close to it walk away, it's kind of baffling to me and mind-boggling, but I'm nobody to question or whatever. But that's why I asked you, Tom, because you with the naked ear was able to sit in that room for 7 weeks, hearing all sorts of evidence and names and pieces of the puzzle. And now you have this big puzzle put together, and there's like, wait a minute, there's what you know what I mean? I don't know, and I was kidding about being a pot stirrer. I only said that because that's come up a couple of times in a trial with Heather Daybell. She was a
Yeah.
pot stirrer or whatever, but I don't care, like I have the same question. Why is Melanie Boudreau, Polanski, Pula, whatever your name is, like, why are you not a part of this, right? And I don't have enough viewers for this to get out to people, but hey, maybe this will get it going, right? I don't know.
I hope
But
so. And that's why I keep talking about it, and that's why I'm writing a third book, is because I believe there's other dangers out there. There's other dangerous people out there. Um, they're not all child killers, but
yeah,
they're all dangerous. They're all um, religious hucksters. They're benefiting. They're trying to they're trying to sell their snake oil, I guess,
yeah,
and they're profiting off of the backs of innocent people, more
yeah.
naive people.
You were in Arizona, yes?
Yes.
Beginning to end?
I didn't stay till the end. After the prosecution's closing argument, I left because we were going to have to wait 4 or 5 days, and I needed to get back here. So I
No
missed
worries.
missed that part of it.
The reason why I ask is I heard now this is way, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. Was Melanie Pulowski at one of these did you ever see her there in Arizona? Somebody said that she was. Somebody said, "Oh, we saw Melanie Pulowski." I find that hard to believe that you would be taunting enough to do that, right? If I was her, I'd be in the other continent where there's no extradition if I was her personally. You never saw her there.
I did not, and I haven't heard that.
Let me
So,
ask you a question. Let's just say that you're walking down the hall after, there's a break and you go down the hall, take a drink of water, and you happen to see her and she's by herself, no expensive suits. What would you say to her? Would you say something to her?
oh, I totally would.
What would you say? What would you say, Tom?
Well, it's not going to be that exciting because I would approach her the way I approach everybody else, and I've approached a lot of people trying to get information. None of them on her side have been willing to talk to me, and I wish I could figure out a way to make that happen, but none of them will. They have a lot to lose, right?
I would
All the
love,
people
yeah,
on the
oh
good
yeah,
side,
a
almost
lot.
all the people on the good side have talked to me. But what I would ask her would be, would you be willing to sit down for an hour or so with me and have a conversation? And
Nice.
because there's so many questions.
And would you say, by the way, Chuck will be there just because he's gonna write things down?
We could do that. We could get her to do it.
No, we're not going to get that to happen. I wish, but that would be nice. Um, a couple more questions, and I'll let you go, brother, because I know you have some other stuff that you got to do. It, this hour, gosh, we've been here an hour. It's felt like 5 minutes. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Just to kind of wrap things up a little. If there was something that you could change about the jury duty process, what would it be?
Hmm. The food.
Ah, okay.
That sounds so trivial. And I guess looking back, it kind of is. But when you're sitting there day to day and you're forced to eat whatever it is they bring you, and they did their best. Like they would have food brought in from a local restaurant every day, and it wasn't like cheap or bad food. And I heard the Toss told you that they didn't get their lunches in Arizona. That's pretty cheap,
They
but they
didn't get
did get paid. Um,
barely
yeah, well, I think it was $300 if your work didn't pay, and you got $300 a day as a juror, which
three
we
hundred
didn't have
dollars
that.
a day.
$300 a day if your work didn't compensate you for your time off.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, otherwise it was like $4 a day or something.
Oh wow. I would have
And
been
like,
like, my job is not paying me, sir. I don't know what to do.
yeah, exactly. And but in Idaho, we ended up getting $35 a day, which was up from the normal 15. Normally it's 15, but if it goes over 10 days or something, then it bumps up to a whole 35. But we got meals, but it was really unhealthy. And the reason I say it was actually important is there's so much stress. And by the time that trial was over, my blood pressure was over the roof. It was like out of control. And I was really battling to fight that. And I think part of it was just an unhealthy situation for me. I'm used to being active and moving around, and now I'm stuck in this room and eating whatever food they put in front of me and snacks. There's a lot of snacks. But I have to say, a little ways into it, I talked to one of the bailiffs and I said, "Hey, man, is there any way they could bring in healthier, fresh food for us to eat?" And they did. They brought in fruit and all kinds of stuff for us. So, but yeah, I wish they had done that from the beginning. And then my blood pressure may not have spiked, and it might not have taken me a couple of months to get it back down.
What would you have done if they would have brought in green enchiladas on one of the days before you knew about them?
At the time, I would have probably thought, "Oh, this is good. I'm going to eat the heck out of this."
Tom, really quick, if someone told you, you know what, these two individuals are going to be honest with you, no matter what, they're going to be honest. What would you say to Chad and Lori?
Oh
You can
man.
talk to them. What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing would be a question. For Lori, it would be, how did you get to a place where you could murder your own children? The 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 people that it's ingrained in you to protect. you could murder them and you feel okay about that. How did you get there? For Chad, it would be I would just tell him what a coward he is, and I would ask him, I want to know. Um, in his house, there was a window upstairs in the cozy cone that did have power. Um, that window overlooked the backyard to where the fire pit and where JJ had been buried, that area. And I want to know, um, was he looking out that window the night that Tylee was murdered, watching Alex? Was he just cowardly creeping, looking out that window, watching what happened, or was he there? Was he part of it? Did he actually partake in any of those murders himself?
Great questions. Those are very, very good, meaningful questions. That would be awesome if that would be an opportunity because there's so many questions that so many people have for them. If I was to answer that question, I would say no, because Chad is just a big oof. He's just a big. I wish sometimes I can say some really derogatory terms on this platform, and I think I could, but I'm not going to. But he is just a big pansy. He's a coward. I just want
Yeah.
to punch him in his neck. I do. I wish they would let anyway, yeah, you wouldn't get that out of him anyway. But
No.
Tom, last question for you, my friend. Was this all worth it for you?
So in other words, would I do it over again
Yeah.
if I could go back in time? Um, I would do it over again. And it it's not that it's worth it for me because it's not really about me, but it is a meaningful thing. And I'm proud of my service and the part that I took because I'm so proud of everybody else that was involved in this. Right? I when I so we were going through all the COVID years and all the violence and everything going on in our country, and nobody being called to account for all the horrible things they were doing. And it was just a really depressing time. We were just kind of coming out of that when this trial happened, and so I was kind of down on everything. But this brought all that back for me. It brought what I believe in our country. It brought that back. It it replaced it for me, and that really meant a lot to me. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for um, the whole the whole court system, the prosecution, the police, all of that. I'm thankful for the families. A lot of people in the media um, have been so generous with me and kind. And yeah, I would do it again. Just
Excellent.
for those
And the
reasons.
one, and thank you for sharing that, brother. I really do appreciate that. And the one thing I should have asked you before this, did this change your life?
Oh yeah, it changed it. Not just on a like day to day what I do every day level. Like it definitely did that. Now I'm sitting here writing on the computer or whatever, researching stuff instead of being outside doing this kind of stuff I used to do. Uh,
Has any family members said to you or not complained, but it's kind of like, Tom, don't let this consume you. Tom, relax. Have you heard any of that?
my dad, um, yeah, he told me he just repeated over and over the other day. He said, just relax, take it easy. So yeah, but he's the only one that I can think of that's actually said that.
Got it. Mr. Evans, Tom Evans, I cannot thank you enough. My fact finders can't thank you enough. Obviously, you've been on so many platforms talking about your experience. I hope this was somewhat unique and different to just kind of have a different type of vibe to it. Probably have you on again just to kind of. Are you going to be in Arizona for the Boudreaux?
Um, I might be. There's one particular individual who is going to try to be there. If that person is able to be there, I'm going because I've been waiting to meet him for a long time. This will be my first opportunity. If he's not there, then I'm not sure because honestly, I can sit here and watch it on TV. I can hear it better. Um, oh, I'm not sure. Possibly. We'll see.
Do you mind me asking who that individual is?
I don't mind you asking, but I'm not going to tell you.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Well, whoever you are, please be there so we can get Tom to Arizona. We'd like to see him out there. I think I'm gonna go probably like at the end of the first week, I'll probably be there. But listen, Tom, I'm in Boise often. I'm in Boise a lot. Number one, I love Boise. Boise is beautiful. I
It's
love
great.
Boise. I love everything about Boise. City life, nature stuff. I love Boise. So, if ever I'm in town again, I will hit you up, shoot you a text saying, "Hey, Tom, I'm in town. I'm going to be in town. Maybe we can go get some lunch or something." My wife would like to meet you as well, so I think that would be nice.
Please do that. Yeah, we can get the wives and go have lunch, or
Yeah.
you guys are welcome to come to our house. We can sit around
Thank
and
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And thank you again, Tom, for taking the time. Ladies and gentlemen, fact finders on Facts Me That podcast. Tom Evans, juror number 18, shared his time with us today. We can't thank you enough. Tom, take care of yourself. God bless you. And take some time for yourself. I'm sure you get this all the time, but, take a break every once in a while and, just do you and, try not to think about it too much because this has got to be heavy. It's heavy on people like me that just watch it from TV just to think that this type of thing is going on in this world. So I can't imagine someone who was front and center hearing about all these details and having to make choices about this. I can't imagine how hard it would be. So take time for yourself. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Facts Me That podcast. We will see you again soon. And everybody take care of each other. Have a good
thank
day.
you.
Okay.